They said no species could survive that mini-war, but then they saw his file. The arrival spire of the Apex Institute for Interspecies Relations was a monument to sterile precision. Polished chrome and glowing light panels flowed in seamless, mathematically perfect curves. The air itself felt curated. It was filtered to a universal standard of inoffensiveness. It hummed with the energy of anti-gravity fields and the soft, overlapping chatter of 100 different species communicating through personalized translation devices. Beings of crystal, gas, and flesh moved with purpose. Their luggage glided silently beside them on designated energy streams. It was a place of supreme order. It was a testament to the Galactic Council's vision of a peaceful, regulated cosmos. Then a human arrived and broke it. Liam Arkwright looked utterly unremarkable amidst the riot of alien biology. He was of average height for his species, with brown hair and a worn travel pack slung over one shoulder. The pack seemed offensively practical in the pristine environment. He waited patiently in line. He shuffled forward when prompted. He placed his pack onto the shimmering field of the molecular integrity scanner. The machine was a marvel of KRYLL engineering. It was designed to analyze and catalog the atomic structure of any object placed upon it. The machine reacted as if it had been physically assaulted. First, it emitted a soft, questioning chime. This was a sound no one in the security division had ever heard it make. This was followed by a frantic cascade of internal clicks. Its diagnostic subroutines tried and failed to categorize what they were seeing. A series of amber warning lights flashed, then shifted to a solid, panicked crimson. Finally, the scanner let out a high-pitched electronic shriek. It was a sound of pure operational agony. Then the shimmering field collapsed and every terminal in the security checkpoint went dark. The curated hum of the spire was replaced by a sudden, jarring silence. It was punctuated by the startled clicks, whistles, and chirps of the assembled travelers. Praetor Vex, chief of Institute Security, moved through the stalled crowd. He moved like a surgical instrument designed for intimidation. His Vexian carapace was a polished obsidian. His four upper limbs were crossed neatly over his thorax. It was a gesture of barely contained irritation. His lower four limbs carried him across the floor with a speed that belied his bulk. He stopped before Liam. His multifaceted eyes took in the human's plain clothing and the offending travel pack, now sitting inert on the dead scanner. Explain. Praetor Vex's voice was a dry, chittering rasp, translated instantly by the device on Liam's collar. Your item has caused a catastrophic failure in a system rated for continuous operation for 3 standard centuries. Liam blinked. He looked from the dead scanner to the imposing insectoid. I'm not sure what happened. It's just my bag. The scanner flagged your bag for containing multiple unregistered biocontaminants, class, for hazardous materials, and this cannot be correct. Tactical survival equipment exceeding military specifications. The security chief's mandibles clicked in frustration. The concept of a civilian carrying military-grade gear was a violation of at least 17 different Institute protocols. Tactical? No, it's just my first aid kit and some emergency supplies, Liam said. A hint of confusion was in his own voice. He seemed genuinely puzzled by the commotion. For the trip. Praetor Vex's internal logic began to fray. He was a being of protocols and threat assessments. He understood weapons. He understood contraband. He did not understand this. Itemize the contents of this. First aid kit. Sure. Liam unzipped the pack. Well, there are bandages, antiseptic wipes, suture kits, painkillers, suture kits. Praetor Vex interrupted. You are equipped to perform field surgery on yourself. It's just for deep cuts, Liam said, as if this were a perfectly normal clarification. Then there are the tourniquets, a couple of emergency splints, broad-spectrum antiviral agents, and some radiation chelation pills. Each word landed like a physical blow to Praetor Vex's ordered mind. Tourniquets, a tool for dealing with catastrophic limb loss. Antivirals, for exposure to unknown, hostile biospheres. Radiation pills, for surviving the lethal energies of a dying star. These were not the contents of a student's travel kit. This was the manifest of a soldier expecting to be shipwrecked on a world actively trying to kill him. And this? Praetor Vex pointed a sharp, chidden his finger at a metal object with multiple folding components. "Oh, that's just my multi-tool," Liam said, picking it up. He unfolded one of the attachments. "It's got pliers, a knife, a screwdriver. Oh, and a bone saw." Bone saw. The words echoed in the Vexian's mind. A tool designed for amputation in the most primitive conditions. He stared at the human, at his soft skin, his lack of natural armor, his ridiculously vulnerable bipedal form. He had assessed the human as threat level, negligible upon first sight. Now, his threat assessment subroutines were screaming. Not because the human was armed, but because he was prepared. Prepared for horrors that civilized species had engineered their societies to avoid entirely. The weapon isn't the saw, a cold, logical part of his brain concluded. The weapon is the philosophy that considers a bone saw a standard travel accessory. Praetor Vex, a junior officer whispered. His own carapace was a nervous shade of gray. We managed to reboot a diagnostic terminal. The scanner didn't crash because of a power surge. It crashed because it couldn't assign a threat category. The contents register simultaneously. As medical supplies, survival equipment, and instruments of gross biological trauma, the AI suffered a logic cascade. Praetor Vex straightened to his full height. This was beyond a simple security violation. This was a matter of species-level threat assessment. This human, this unassuming, polite, soft-skinned creature, was a walking, talking paradox. He had just defeated a 500,000 credit state-of-the-art security system by simply being prepared for a normal Tuesday on his home world. "Young man," Praetor Vex said, his voice now dangerously calm. "You will come with me. We need to have a conversation with the dean." The medical wing's conference room was a sphere of soft, uniform light. There were no corners, only gentle, sweeping curves of a material that seemed to absorb sound. This created an atmosphere of profound and unnerving silence. In the center of the room, a holographic table displayed the medical file of Liam Arkwright. It was less a file and more a digital cry for help. Anatomical models of a human body spun slowly, littered with crimson flags denoting past traumas. Biotelemetry graphs spiked repeatedly into zones labeled with the clinical, unambiguous term. Terminal, Dean Orthos, a towering KRYLL whose crystalline form was a complex matrix of amethyst and quartz, stood with his two primary limbs clasped. Behind his back, he resembled a sentient geological formation, ancient and immovable. Beside him, Dr. Kayleys, a more slender being of pure, clear crystal, moved with the quick, precise gestures of a master technician discovering a fundamental flaw in the universe's code. His internal light, usually a steady, cool blue, flickered with an arrhythmia of disbelief. "The data must be corrupted," Kayleys stated, his translated voice a series of perfectly modulated chimes. It was the third time he had said it. No biological entity can sustain this sequence of systemic trauma and maintain homeostatic function. It is a statistical and biological impossibility. Liam, sitting in the room's only guest chair, shifted uncomfortably. "I promise you, I'm in pretty good health. I had a checkup before I left." Dr. Kayleys activated a new projection. He pointed a long, crystalline finger at a skeletal model overlaid with glowing red lines. "Mr. Arkwright, our analysis indicates your skeletal structure has sustained a minimum of 17 distinct fracture events. From compound fractures to major load-bearing limbs. In my species," he added, a slight tremor in his chime, "a single fracture is a generational tragedy." "Oh right. Yeah, that was a bad ski season," Liam said. "The compound fracture in my tibia was from a snowboarding accident when I was 16. I fell off a jump wrong. The others, mostly from soccer and a couple of bad falls while rock climbing." Dean Orthos's massive form vibrated slightly. This was a low hum that was the KRYLL equivalent of a grimace. "You engage in recreational activities that have a high probability of shattering your skeletal structure? Well, you try not to fall," Liam offered, as if this explained everything. "Let us proceed," Kayleys said. He waved a hand to dismiss the skeletal model and brought up a new diagram of human musculature and soft tissue. "We have also flagged 82 instances of severe tissue damage. Lacerations requiring stitching." He pronounced the word as if it were an obscene ancient curse. "Third-degree burns and multiple concussive events. The burns were a campfire mishap, Liam explained. My fault. I wasn't paying attention. Most of the cuts are just from being a clumsy kid. The concussions, well, 2 were from sports, and 1 was from falling out of a tree. Kaylee's paused his frantic typing on the console. You fell out of a tree. I was trying to get a cat down. The doctor's internal light flickered wildly. He turned to the dean. His stated reasons for sustaining life-threatening injuries are consistently categorized under recreation and minor mishaps. He then turned back to Liam. His professional calm was stretched to its breaking point. And the neurotoxin? The file indicates you were hospitalized for ingesting a substance that, according to our database, should have caused irreversible central nervous system failure. Within 1 hour. That was a bad one, Liam admitted. I was on a long-distance hike and ran out of food. I thought I recognized the berries. I was wrong. I spent 3 days in the hospital. The stomach pump was not fun. To Dr. Kaylee's, this was the ravings of a madman. Each of Liam's explanations was more insane than the last. He didn't just survive these events. He categorized them as anecdotes, as learning experiences. This being wasn't a patient. He was a living museum of healed catastrophes. Kaylee's felt a growing sense of professional dread. His entire life's work was based on the predictable, elegant laws of biology. Liam Arkwright's body was a graffiti-covered monument built on the ruins of those laws. Dean Orthos finally spoke. His voice was a deep, resonant thrum that commanded attention. Mr. Arkwright, the issue is not your current state of health, which appears, inexplicably, to be excellent. The issue is one of context. He gestured to the hollow table. The Institute's medical systems are flagging your file because, from its perspective, you should not be alive. It is trying to reconcile the medical history of a being who has survived multiple near-death events with the psychological profile of a well-adjusted, stable student. So, I'm an outlier? Liam asked. You are an impossibility, Orthos corrected gently. Which leads us to the crux of the matter. When you were accepted to the Institute, you were aware of your home world's galactic classification. Yes. I don't think so. I just knew I got the scholarship. Dean Orthos's crystal structure seemed to darken. He manipulated the hollow table, and a new image appeared. It showed a spinning blue and white planet, Earth. Beside it, a block of text glowed ominously. Your home world, Earth, the dean stated, is officially classified by the Galactic Council as an extinction hazard crucible world, Category 9. Liam looked at the designation. Crucible world? Is that good? A crucible world, Orthos explained, his voice resonating with grim finality, is a planet whose environmental conditions are so extreme, so relentlessly hostile, that they are believed to not just challenge life, but to actively forge it through a perpetual trial of lethal intensity. High gravity, extreme axial tilt causing severe weather, a chaotic magnetosphere resulting in high radiation, and a biosphere defined by what our analysts call hypercompetitive predatory evolution. He paused, letting the information settle. Category 9 is the highest hazard rating a planet can have while still supporting complex carbon-based life. Mr. Arkwright, you are not an outlier. You are the product of an environment that, by all galactic standards, should be a sterile rock. Your medical history is not a series of unfortunate accidents. It is the normal, expected biography of a Category 9 crucible world inhabitant. The silence in the room was absolute. Liam stared at the image of his beautiful, familiar world, now framed as a galactic death trap. He thought of skiing, of hiking, of campfires and climbing trees. He thought of them as life. The Apex Institute for Interspecies Relations, it seemed, thought of them as a war. The Crucible was Professor Tectones' masterpiece. It was the jewel of the Apex Institute's practical education department. It was a vast, self-contained sphere where holographic light, atmospheric processors, and kinetic feedback plates worked in concert. They perfectly replicated the most hostile environments in the known galaxy. Today, it was programmed to simulate Xylos 4b. This was a tectonically unstable volcanic moonlet with a sulfur-rich, corrosive atmosphere and gravity at 1.4 times standard. It was a place where survival was measured in minutes. It was the final test for his advanced environmental adaptation course. Through the polarized windows of the observation booth, Tectones watched his students struggle. A trio of six-limbed Gnarl scurried from one rocky outcrop to the next. Their bulky environmental suits already showed warning indicators. A pair of amorphous Zorgs had pooled in a crevice. Their gelatinous forms shivered against the simulated cold. This was as expected. Level 10 simulations were designed to push students to their absolute breaking point. They were meant to teach them humility in the face of a hostile universe. Then, there was the human. Liam Arkwright was not wearing an environmental suit. He was dressed in a standard-issue gray training uniform that offered no protection whatsoever from corrosive acid rain or extreme temperature shifts. And he was not struggling. He was, to Tectones' profound and growing confusion, enjoying himself. Biometric readings on the human subject remain nominal, reported Kthar, Tectones' Vexian teaching assistant. His mandibles clicked with nervous energy. Heart rate is 85 beats per minute. Respiration is steady. Core temperature is perfectly regulated. Sir, is our equipment malfunctioning? Tectones didn't answer. He was watching Liam pause at the edge of a chasm. A geyser of superheated gas erupted every 20 seconds. Liam wasn't avoiding it. He had a small data pad out and appeared to be timing the eruptions. A look of intense curiosity was on his face. When a light, corrosive drizzle began to fall, a condition that would cause first-degree chemical burns on most exposed skin, Liam simply held out his hand. He let the droplets fizzle against his palm before rubbing his fingers together. He had a thoughtful expression on his face, as if analyzing the texture. Then he started humming. It was a cheerful, rhythmic tune. It was utterly at odds with the shrieking holographic winds and the distant rumble of collapsing rock shelves in the observation dome. The other students had stopped their own panic preparations for their turn in the crucible. They were now pressed against the glass, a silent, horrified audience. Their translation devices couldn't pick up Liam's humming, but his body language was a universal language of casual disregard for mortal danger. Professor, Kthar's voice was tight. The human is now jogging. It was true. Liam had apparently finished his analysis of the geyser. He was now moving through a field of shifting, unstable rock plates at a steady trot. He navigated the treacherous terrain with an unnerving grace. His balance shifted instinctively. His feet landed on the most stable points as if he possessed some innate understanding of geology and physics. The simulation ended not because Liam had reached the designated safe zone, but because the 60-minute timer ran out. As the holographic environment faded and the chamber lights returned to normal, Liam was standing in the center of the room. He was breathing slightly harder than before, with a light sheen of sweat on his forehead. He looked like he'd just finished a pleasant afternoon workout. The Zorgs had to be scraped into a containment unit. The Gnarl trio were being treated for acute stress and minor suit breaches. Liam was the first one in the debriefing room. Professor Tectones entered a few minutes later. His crystalline form felt unusually brittle. He had designed the Xylos, for B simulation to be his ultimate test. It was, for all intents and purposes, unbeatable. An excellent performance, Mr. Arkwright, Tectones began. He tried to keep his tone academic and detached. Your score was, well, you broke the scoring system, but your efficiency was exemplary. Do you have any feedback on the simulation? Oh, yeah, definitely, Liam said, leaning forward eagerly. It was great, really immersive. But I have a few suggestions if you don't mind. Tectones straightened, intrigued. Please, proceed. Well, the environmental hazards are good, very consistent. But they're too predictable, Liam said. The geyser erupts every 20 seconds, on the dot. The rock slides happen in designated zones. To make it more realistic, you'd want more randomness. Maybe tie the geyser activity to seismic tremors, so you have to watch the ground and the clock. You could also add compounding environmental factors. For example, have the acid rain react with the mineral deposits on the ground to create a toxic fog in low-lying areas. Professor Tectones was very still. He was the foremost expert on hazardous planetary environments in 3 sectors. This human student was, in the span of 30 seconds, suggesting improvements to his life's work. The suggestions were both brilliant and profoundly alarming. Also, Liam continued, warming to his subject. It felt a little empty. An environment that extreme would have life forms that evolved to handle it. You could add some hostile fauna. Maybe something that hunts using seismic vibrations, so you can't stand still for too long. Or flying creatures that are resistant to the corrosive atmosphere. That would really force students to maintain total situational awareness. Hostile. Fauna. Tectones repeated slowly. Mr. Arkwright, the purpose of the simulation is to teach survival, not to ensure 100% mortality. Right, of course, Liam said, blushing slightly. Just some ideas. Tectones decided to change the subject. He hoped to find some baseline for this human's terrifying worldview. Mr. Arkwright, to help me calibrate future simulations. For you, could you describe some common recreational activities on Earth? From the corner of his eye, Tectones saw Kthar and two other students who had come to watch the debrief lean in closer. Oh, sure. Well, a lot of people are into what we call extreme sports, Liam began. Things that push your limits. Like, some people chase tornadoes. One of the observing students, a small, furry creature from Cygnus X-1, made a small whimpering sound. They chase planet-scale atmospheric vortices? Tectones asked, ensuring his translator was functioning correctly. Yeah, they're called storm chasers. They try to get as close as possible to take readings. And get footage. It's for science, mostly. And the adrenaline rush, I guess. Adrenaline, Tectones muttered. He made a note to have Dr. Cayley's brief him on this uniquely human combat hormone. Then there's deep cave diving, Liam went on, oblivious to the growing panic in the room. That's where you explore underwater cave systems that are miles deep. It's incredibly dangerous. If your equipment fails, you're in a tight, dark space with no air, hundreds of feet underwater. Kthar, the Vexian assistant, began slowly backing out of the room. And of course, Liam said with a grin, there's always the classic. Jumping out of a perfectly good airplane. The small, furry student fainted. Professor Tectones stared at Liam. This student wasn't just resilient. He wasn't just adapted to a crucible world. He and his entire species had looked at their lethal planet, a place of relentless, grinding horror that would kill almost any other being, and had collectively decided it wasn't challenging enough. They had invented new and creative ways to risk their lives. They called it fun. A chime from his console saved him. It was a priority summons from the dean's office. Tectones had a sinking feeling he knew what it was about. Thank you, Mr. Arkwright, he managed to say, his voice strained. That will be all. Your performance was illuminating. As Liam left the room, still humming, Tectones sank into his chair. He looked at the schematics for his crucible, his masterpiece of simulated lethality. It was no masterpiece. It was a child's playground. And he had just met a representative of a species that hunted gods for sport. The Apex Institute's primary dining hall was a controlled riot of sensory information. The air, a carefully balanced mix of nitrogen, oxygen, and trace elements, carried the scent of 1,000 different meals. It held the ozone tang of a KRYLL energy crystal supplement, the damp, loamy aroma of a thornweave nutrient paste, and the searing, ammonia-heavy scent of a Vexian protein slurry. It was a place of diverse, yet peaceful, coexistence. At the center of this polite chaos was the human table. It had started organically. After the incident in the Crucible simulation, Liam Arkwright had become an object of intense curiosity. Students would drift by his table, asking tentative questions, and some would stay. Now, it was a regular gathering point for a small, eclectic group of aliens. They were brave or curious enough to engage with the Academy's resident paradox. Today's attendees included Relay, a serene aquatic being from a world of global oceans whose thoughts were translated as soft, melodic prose. Also present was Xylo, a silicon-based life form from a tidally locked planet, whose logic was as rigid and intricate as his crystalline anatomy. Liam, Xylo began, his synthesized voice a flat, emotionless monotone that made his questions all the more pointed. My xenobiological studies indicate that most life-bearing worlds of Earth's classification, a type G star, stable liquid water, complex atmosphere, typically develop 2, sometimes 3, competing sapient species. Our archives contain no record of humanity's evolutionary competitors. Who were they? Liam paused, his fork halfway to his mouth. It was an innocent, academic question. He knew the honest answer would be anything but. He decided to start with the easy part. Well, We didn't really have any direct competitors in the way you mean, he said slowly. There weren't other species that built cities or developed technology alongside us. Real AS form, contained within a hovering sphere of nutrient-rich water, swirled with gentle blue currents of relief. Ah, so your world was one. Of rare peace. A garden planet, perhaps? Liam coughed, nearly choking on his mouthful of reconstituted protein. No, not exactly. It wasn't that there was no competition. It was that the competition was everything else. Xylo, process this. Please clarify everything else. The megafauna, for a start, Liam explained. For most of our early history, we were squarely in the middle of the food chain. We had to contend with things like saber-toothed cats. They were massive predators with teeth, like daggers. We had dire wolves, which were like our modern wolves, but bigger and far more aggressive. There were also giant bears that could stand twice as tall as a human. He saw the confused looks on their faces. Basically, for thousands of years, our primary survival strategy was to be very, very good at running away and hiding. Fascinating, Xylo stated. Your species developed sapience while under constant predatory pressure from superior biological organisms. This would necessitate a high degree of cooperative threat response and ingenuity. Exactly, Liam said, relieved. We got very good at making tools, setting traps, and working together to take down things that were much bigger and stronger than we were. Over time, we became the apex predator. We outcompeted everything else. Real AS water swirled again, this time with a troubled gray tint. What does outcompeted mean in this context, Liam? Liam chose his words carefully. It means that, eventually, we were the only ones left. He saw the look of dawning horror on Real AS' gentle face and decided to quickly move on. But that was a long, long time ago. Prehistory. A logical progression, Xylo conceded, though his internal light was flickering slightly faster than usual. Once your species secured its position as the planet's dominant life form, I assume you entered a prolonged period of peaceful development and technological advancement. Liam took a long drink of water. This was the hard part. Well, yes and no, he started. We did develop. Rapidly. But peace, that took a bit longer. Once the big external threats were gone, we sort of became the new external threat. To each other. The two aliens stared at him. I do not understand. Real AS translation flowed. You had vanquished all other predators. You were the sole sapient species. Who was there left to fight? Ourselves. Liam said simply. We formed tribes, then city-states, then nations. And we fought. We fought over land, over resources, over beliefs, over shiny rocks. You name it. We probably had a war about it. He tried for a reassuring smile. We call it human history. Xylo remained motionless for a full 10 seconds, processing. Your claim is that after achieving global biological supremacy, your species immediately engaged in millennia of organized, interspecies mass violence. That's one way to put it, Liam admitted. We called it progress. The cafeteria, which had been a low hum of activity, was growing quieter. Students at nearby tables had paused their own meals. Their various sensory organs were now aimed squarely at the human table. But surely, Relay whispered, your advancements in technology led to a cessation of such primitive behavior. Oh no, it just made us better at it, Liam said, before he could stop himself. Our technological history and our military history are basically the same story. The Bronze Age, the Iron Age, those were defined by the metals we used to kill each other. Then we invented gunpowder. That was a huge leap forward in what we euphemistically called force projection. The level of destruction must have been catastrophic, Xylo calculated. It was, Liam said soberly. In the 20th century of our old calendar, we had two massive global conflicts. We called them world wars. Tens of millions died. We flattened entire cities with what we called strategic bombing. Relay's sphere began to wobble. Her internal currents were a chaotic swirl of gray and dark blue. This is the history of your people? A history of self-destruction. It's complicated, Liam said. He felt the weight of thousands of years of human violence. But those conflicts eventually led to a new kind of stability. A very human kind of stability. Xylo tilted his crystalline head. Please define human stability. We call it mutually assured destruction, Liam said. For about 50 years, the two biggest global powers held each other in check. They both developed weapons so powerful they could wipe out all life on the planet. The only thing that prevented a third world war was the absolute certainty that, if one side started it, both sides would be completely annihilated. We built our most lasting peace on the promise of total, inescapable self-immolation. The entire cafeteria was now silent. Every single being was listening. A small, furry student at the next table made a soft, squeaking noise and slid unconscious. From its chair, Xylo, the being of pure logic, looked as if his core programming had just encountered a paradox it could not solve. This is irrational. The game theory model is, it is insane. You maintain peace by holding a weapon to your own head and trusting your enemy to be just as insane as you were. Pretty much, Liam nodded. It worked. Mostly. The silence stretched, thick and heavy. A young KRYLL at a nearby table, a first-year student with a flawless, shining surface, raised a trembling, crystalline hand. Liam? The student chimed, his voice barely a whisper. You fought the animals, and then you fought each other, for thousands of years. Did you ever stop? Liam looked at the sea of alien faces. They were horrified, fascinated, terrified. They were all fixed on him. He thought of humanity's long, bloody, and impossibly resilient journey. He thought of all the wars, the struggles, the victories, and the terrible, terrible cost. He gave a small, sad smile. Yeah, he said quietly. We won. The final assessment chamber was a place of legend and dread at the Apex Institute. It was known to students only as the Black Box. It was not a classroom. It was a crucible designed to distill a student's entire being. It measured their knowledge, their ethics, their courage, their breaking point, into a single, quantifiable score. Inside, a candidate would live through a full immersion holographic simulation. It could last up to 3 standard days. They would face a scenario meticulously engineered by the Institute's sharpest minds to be unwinnable in any conventional sense. It was the ultimate test of command potential. Dean Orthos watched from the darkened observation theater as Liam Arkwright stepped into the empty chamber. He was flanked by Dr. Kayleys and Professor Tectones. All three had a vested and deeply unnerved interest in the outcome. They had seen the human's medical records. They had witnessed his performance in the survival simulation. They had listened to the second-hand reports of his conversations about humanity's terrifying history. They believed that here, finally, in the cold, unforgiving logic of the black box, they would find his limit. The scenario is designated event. Horizon's choice, Tectones explained, his voice a low rumble. The subject assumes command of the Starship Steward. It is a research vessel carrying the last cultural artifacts of the extinct Cygnian civilization. Its warp core is failing, and it is caught in a decaying orbit around a singularity. The clock is running. A classic ethical dilemma, Dr. Kayleys chimed. His internal light was a cool, analytical blue. A test of priorities. On the main holo display, they saw what Liam was seeing. It was the bridge of a crippled ship, with alarms blaring. The terrifying, light-devouring maw of a black hole filled the main view screen. He has 3 options, Orthos clarified. His gaze was fixed on the human's calm expression. First, he can use the ship's remaining power to launch the escape pods. This would save the multi-species crew but sacrifice the ship and the priceless Cygnian artifacts. Second, he can use the power to stabilize the ship's orbit long enough for a rescue that will never come. This saves the artifacts, but dooms the crew. It is a test for cold, logical utilitarianism. And the third option? Kayleys asked. The third option is the true test, Tectones said. A small, unregistered refugee transport has been caught in the same gravity well. The steward has just enough power to emit a focused graviton burst, pushing the refugee ship to safety. Doing so, however, will accelerate its own orbital decay. This ensures the complete loss of the ship, the crew, and the artifacts. It is the ultimate test of altruism versus duty. The faculty watched, ready to analyze and to judge. They expected Liam to weigh the options. They expected him to agonize and to make a difficult but predictable choice. Liam did none of those things. His first action was to ignore the 3 primary options completely. He opened a ship-wide channel. All right, People, listen up. His voice cut through the simulated chaos. This is your new captain. I need engineering to bypass the primary plasma conduits and reroute all available power from life support and inertial dampeners directly into the warp core's containment field. It's going to get cold and bumpy, so strap in. In the observation theater, Kaylee's light flickered. He is draining life support? That will shorten the crew's survival window by half. And disabling the dampeners while in a gravity well is madness, Tectones rumbled. The tidal forces will tear the crew apart. Next, Liam turned to the holographic crew. Navigation, I need a full topographical map of the Singularity's accretion disk. Communications, find the resonance frequency of the Signian artifacts. I'm going to need you to broadcast it on a wideband. Engineering, once you've rerouted power, I want you to prepare the core for a controlled, subcritical overload. On my mark. A series of red alerts flashed on the observer's monitors. That's simulation AI. Warning. Subject is attempting to destabilize the warp core while within a singularity's gravity well. Probability of successful jump, 0.0001%. Simulation. AI warning. Diverting power from inertial dampeners will result in lethal G-forces for 87% of crew species. He is going to kill them all, Kaylee's whispered. His chimes turned discordant with horror. He has chosen no option. He has chosen annihilation. Wait, Orthos said. His deep voice cut through the rising panic. Look at his trajectory calculations. On the screen, Liam was plotting. A course not away from the black hole, but around it. He was aiming the ship like a projectile. He was using the last of its thruster power to line it up perfectly. He's not trying to jump, Tectones realized. His voice was filled with a new kind of awe. He's not trying to escape. He's aiming. Mark, Liam shouted in the simulation. The ship's warp core, pushed far beyond every safety protocol, pulsed. It didn't create a stable wormhole for travel. It vomited a raw, uncontrolled bubble of distorted spacetime. The bubble shot from the front of the ship. It went not into empty space, but directly into the swirling, hyper-accelerated matter of the black hole's accretion disk. The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic. The warp bubble struck the disk like a stone hitting the surface of a pond. But this pond was made of collapsing stars, and the stone was a rupture in reality itself. A gravitational wave, a ripple of pure physics, erupted from the point of impact. The steward bucked violently. In the observation theater, the faculty watched as their simulation tried to process the event. Simulation AI. Catastrophic gravitational anomaly detected. Core scenario parameters violated. Recalculating. The gravitational wave, perfectly shaped and directed by Liam's insane gamble, washed over the area. It struck the crippled steward first. It hit not with destructive force, but with a colossal push, like a cosmic hand shoving it away from the black hole. Then it hit the refugee vessel, nudging it into a new, stable trajectory. And because Liam had used the artifact's resonance frequency to paint the targets, the wave's energy was focused and precise. That on the main screen, the impossible was displayed in cold, clear telemetry. The steward, its crew, and the refugee vessel were all accelerating away from the black hole. They were thrown clear by the gravitational slingshot Liam had created by literally weaponizing the laws of physics. He then calmly ordered the launch of the escape pods. The pods now had all the time in the world to be rescued. He had saved the crew. He had saved the refugees. And the ship, with its precious cargo, was now on a stable, if powerless, trajectory. He had not chosen A, B, or C. He had achieved all three. The simulation ended. Total elapsed time was 4 hours and 17 minutes. The observation theater was utterly silent. The faculty stared at the final results. Their complex, logical minds struggled to comprehend what they had just witnessed. They had designed an elegant, inescapable trap to test a student's ethics. Liam Arkwright had looked at their trap, refused to acknowledge its rules, and then had broken the trap, the box it came in, and the entire concept of unwinnable scenarios. Today. Final message from the simulation AI appeared on the main screen. Its text was a cold, damning monument to their failure. Assessment complete. Subject has violated 4,712 Institute safety protocols and 19 laws of theoretical physics. Solution achieved is deemed theoretically possible with a 99.7% probability of total self-annihilation. Conclusion: subject strategic and ethical calculus is incompatible with all known models. Recommend immediate psychological evaluation for a condition we have classified as reckless optimism. The observation theater was no longer an academic space. It had become the de facto command center for the most significant diplomatic reassessment in a century. The air, once merely silent, was now heavy with tension. Dean Orthos stood beside his shell-shocked colleagues. All of them were dwarfed by the presence that now dominated the room. Emissary Soliton of the Lumine did not enter through a door. It simply arrived. One moment the space was empty. The next, it was occupied by a column of swirling, silver light. It was a contained nebula of ancient energy that hummed with a power that made the Institute's fusion generators seem like primitive chemical fires. It had no face, no limbs, but its attention was total. Its voice was not heard with ears, but felt within the mind. It was a wave of pure, translated thought. Present the complete data file for the human subject, Liam Arkwright. On the central hollow table, the disparate pieces of the puzzle assembled into a terrifying mosaic. The security scans of his travel pack, the sea of red flags that was his medical history, the telemetry from the Crucible simulation, showing his stable heart rate amidst simulated chemical firestorms, the audio logs from the cafeteria, where he had casually described millennia of self-inflicted warfare, and finally, the complete data packet from the black box, detailing his impossible solution to the unwinnable test. Emissary Soliton's light pulsed. It brightened to an almost painful intensity as it absorbed the entirety of the data in seconds. The low hum in the room deepened. It was the sound of a galactic-level intellect processing a reality-shattering anomaly. For a full minute, the Lumine was silent. The light within its form churned like a storm. The KRYLL faculty waited. Their crystalline structures resonated with the emissary's palpable cognitive effort. When Soliton finally spoke, its thought voice was calm and clear. It carried the weight of a fundamental truth newly discovered. We have been operating under a flawed premise. The mental statement settled over the assembled officials. For millennia, the Council has classified planets. We have measured threats. We have ranked worlds by their danger to life, from the gentle gardens of Category 1 to the lethal hellscapes of Category 9. We believe this was the most important metric. We were wrong. The light of the emissary seemed to focus on Dean Orthos. It was a piercing gaze without eyes. The fatal flaw in our logic was this. We never considered that a world's danger could be a forge. We never conceived that a species might not merely survive such a forge, but master it. That it might look upon a crucible and call it home. Soliton turned its attention back to the data. We classify worlds by their danger. From this day forward, we must classify species by their adaptation to danger. And by that metric, humanity is in a category of its own. The emissary made a gesture that had no physical component, but was felt by everyone in the room as a command. A new directive, under the seal of the Galactic Council's inner circle, materialized on the main display. This council hereby reclassifies the sapient species originating from Sol 3, known as humanity. The old designation, potential threat, containment, protocol, restricted observation, was erased. In its place, new words burned in silver light. They were words that no one present had ever seen used to describe a species before. Reclassification, foundational event. Dr. Cayley's made a soft, chiming sound of shock. A foundational event was a term reserved for cosmological phenomena. The formation of a galaxy, the discovery of faster-than-light travel, the invention of artificial intelligence. It was a term for things that irrevocably changed the nature of reality itself. Humanity is not a potential threat to galactic stability, Soliton's voice continued, resonating with the force of a verdict. They are a new parameter in the equation of the galaxy itself. Their existence redefines the limits of biological and psychological resilience. Their history suggests a capacity for both unparalleled destruction and unprecedented unity. To treat them as children to be supervised is not only an insult. It is a strategic blunder of historical proportions. That a final addendum appeared on the screen. It was a direct order to the Apex Institute and all associated diplomatic corps. Directive. Cease observation. Initiate partnership protocols immediately. We do not wish to be their students, and we cannot afford to be their enemies. Our only viable path is to become their allies. That moment, the door to the theater slid open. A junior officer entered, escorting a very confused-looking Liam Arkwright. "You wanted to see me, Dean Orthos?" Liam asked. He looked around, at the grim-faced officials and the pillar of light in the center of the room. "I was just wondering about my test results." Dean Orthos looked from the Galactic Directive that had just redrawn the map of power in the galaxy to the unassuming human at the door. He looked at Emissary Soliton, a being of immense power and wisdom that had just declared this boy's species to be a force of nature. And he looked at Liam, who was fidgeting slightly, a hopeful expression on his face. "So, did I pass?" Liam asked. "And I was just wondering, is there a harder version? I had a few more ideas I wanted to try." In that moment, Dean Orthos understood. The most powerful, most terrifying, and most promising force in the universe wasn't a superweapon or a warship. It was a species that could look at an unwinnable death trap designed by the galaxy's greatest minds and ask, with genuine, unbridled curiosity, for the next level of difficulty.